there! Ready for another deep dive? Today we're stepping into the world of tech startups, specifically their governance. We've got some really interesting excerpts here from a 2024 dissertation someone recommended to us.
Oh, yeah. I'm always up for a deep dive. What's the title?
The unique life cycle of tech startups and the effect on stakeholder dynamics.
Catchy.
Right. And it gets into some fascinating stuff about boards, like how the funding a startup gets can seriously impact who ends up calling the shots.
Makes sense. The more money on the line, the more, say, investors want, right?
Exactly. And this dissertation really digs into that. One of the things that jumped out at me was this almost direct link between the number of funding rounds a startup goes through and how big their board gets.
Yeah, that tracks. You bring in more investors, each one probably wants a seat at the table.
It's like clockwork, according to this research. More funding rounds, more board members.
It's kind of like building a really complex machine. Each funding round brings in new parts, new investors in this case, and they want to make sure the machine runs smoothly. They want to have a say in how it's built, how it operates.
And I'm guessing they're bringing their own tools and expertise to the table, too. The dissertation mentioned a company, Matillion, that had a particularly large board, 11 directors.
11. Wow, it's a lot of voices. What did they do again?
They're an AI data company, apparently went through 7 rounds of funding, so they had a lot of investors, all wanting a say, leading to a pretty massive board.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Having a bunch of different perspectives and experiences on a board can be a huge plus, especially in the fast-moving world of tech. You get people with deep industry knowledge, connections you might not have otherwise.
It's like having a built-in team of advisors. But there's got to be a flip side, right? Don't startups need to be agile, able to adapt quickly? Does a big board slow that down?
That's the million-dollar question. The dissertation definitely suggests that there are some potential downsides to having a supersized board. The more people involved in a decision, the longer it can take. And in the tech world, sometimes you need to move fast.
So it's a trade-off. You want the experience and the networks a larger board can offer, but you don't want to lose that startup scrappiness.
Exactly. And that's where the relationship between founders, investors, and the board can get really interesting, especially as a company grows and goes through more funding rounds.
That makes me think about another thing this dissertation digs into board stability. They found that as startups get more funding, their boards tend to see more changes, more resignations, more shuffling of members. Do you think it's related to what we were just talking about?
Could be. Think about it. Could be. Think about it. You're an investor. You've poured a significant amount of money into a company.
You want to see results.
Exactly. And if you don't think the current leadership, including the board, is delivering those results,
you might push for some changes.
Right. You might want people on the board who align more closely with your vision, who have a certain track record, or who can help steer the company in a new direction.
So it's not just about adding more board members. It's about strategically shaping the board's expertise and, let's be honest, its influence as the company evolves.
Yeah. And that can create some tension, right? Especially between founders who maybe had a very specific vision early on and later stage investors who might have different priorities.
Definitely. And this whole idea of board stability, or lack thereof, that we were talking about, the dissertation actually put some numbers to it. They found that at later stage startups, a director resigns or is removed every 2 years on average.
Wow. Every 2 years. That's a lot of turnover.
It is. And imagine you're an investor thinking about putting money into this company. You see that kind of instability at the top. It makes you wonder what's going on, right?
Absolutely. It can be a red flag. Investors, especially those big-time venture capitalists, they want to see a certain level of stability. They need to trust that the leadership team, including the board, can handle the pressure of growing the business, especially if an IPO is on the horizon.
Because going public is a whole other beast, right? You need a solid, experienced team to navigate that process.
Exactly. And this is where the dissertation's findings on gender diversity really got me thinking, because they found that
only 11.27% of board members in their study were women.
Yeah, which is, let's be real, pretty dismal, especially for an industry that likes to think of itself as forward-thinking, innovative.
Right. You'd think they'd be leading the charge on diversity.
You would. And to make it even more interesting, the dissertation included some data from questionnaires given to employees at these startups. They asked them about their perceptions of board diversity.
Oh, interesting. So they were looking at the gap between perception and reality.
Exactly.
Sure.
And the gap was pretty significant. While only about 11% of board members were women, a whopping 32% of respondents believe their boards to be gender diverse.
Wow. That's a pretty big difference.
It is. It makes you wonder about unconscious bias, right? Like, are we so used to seeing mostly men in leadership positions that we don't even register the lack of diversity anymore?
Or maybe we see one woman on a board and think, okay, that's enough.
It's like we're giving ourselves a pat on the back for the bare minimum.
When really, it should be the starting point. And this isn't just about ticking boxes, right? Having more women on boards isn't just about optics. It's about bringing in different perspectives and different leadership styles.
Absolutely. Diversity of thought, diversity of experience, it all leads to better decision making. The research actually suggests that companies with more gender diverse boards tend to perform better financially.
There you go. So it's not just the right thing to do, it's good for business. But knowing this and actually making it happen, those are two different things.
100%. And the dissertation suggests that real change requires a deep dive into company culture, recruitment practices, really examining how leadership is perceived and valued within an organization.
And unlearning some of those unconscious biases we all have.
Exactly. It's about challenging the status quo, asking ourselves why things are the way they are.
And whether those things are actually serving us or holding us back.
Which brings us to another crucial point the dissertation makes. This constant pressure for short-term gains, often driven by investor expectations, could it actually be stifling innovation, especially those truly groundbreaking ideas that need time to develop? It's like we're prioritizing the quick win over the game changer.
Exactly. And the dissertation, while it doesn't explicitly say this, it kind of hints at this tension, this constant drive for short-term gains, especially coming from investors. It could be making it harder for startups to really go after those long-shot innovations.
Because those big ideas, they need time, right? And probably a lot of investment before they actually pay off.
Exactly. And if you've got a board that's mostly focused on hitting those quarterly targets, are they really going to be patient enough for something that might take years to pan out? It makes you wonder how many potentially revolutionary ideas are being left on the table.
Right. It's easy to say, oh, that's too risky, or we need to see faster returns. But that kind of thinking, it can stifle real progress.
It's like we're stuck in this cycle of incremental improvements instead of pushing the boundaries, really trying to solve the big problems.
And that's what's so exciting about the startup world, right?
Yeah.
Or at least it should be. It's a chance to disrupt, to innovate, to create something truly new. But somewhere along the way, it feels like that entrepreneurial spirit, that willingness to take risks, is getting lost in the pressure to scale quickly and make a quick buck.
It's a tough balance. You need funding to survive, but you don't want to sacrifice your vision for it.
Exactly. And that's why this conversation about startup governance, it's so important. It's about finding that sweet spot, creating an environment where innovation can thrive, even as a company grows and evolves. It's about remembering that sometimes the long game is the one worth playing.
Well said. This has been a fascinating deep dive. Listener, we hope you've enjoyed this exploration of the complex world of tech startups, their boards, and the delicate balance between funding, governance, and innovation. It's a conversation worth continuing, so keep asking those tough questions, and we'll keep searching for answers. Until next time.